I didn't plan to start a war that day. But when I opened the email and saw who got the promotion, I sat there, staring at my screen like someone just slapped me across the face. Tyler. Again. Let me back up. My name's Josh, and for the last 5 years, I've worked at a mid-sized tech firm outside Chicago. I'm not the flashy guy in the room. I don't kiss up. I don't brown nose. I show up early, meet my deadlines, and mind my damn business. I've led major product rollouts, solved client disasters, and trained half the team that keeps this place from crumbling. But none of that mattered. Not when Tyler was in the picture. Tyler, let's circle back, the kind of guy who uses LinkedIn buzzwords like personality traits. He's all blinding smiles and perfectly tailored suits, the type of employee who somehow always forgets to CC you when it matters and accidentally takes credit for your work in meetings. Still, he had one golden ticket. Our boss, Cynthia. She loved him, worshipped him. You could have sworn he invented the internet the way she talked about him. Tyler could walk into a burning building holding a Molotov cocktail, and Cynthia would compliment the way he carried himself under pressure. And me? I was invisible. Until that day. Because that email didn't just say Tyler got the promotion. It said he got the promotion for a project I built from scratch. The pitch deck? Mine. The timeline? Mine. The client relationship? Mine. Tyler just tagged along to the meetings and smiled pretty. And somehow, that got him a shiny new title, Director of Product Strategy, and a fat bonus check. At first, I sat there stunned. Then something inside me snapped. I opened my files. I checked the logs. The pitch deck had been altered. Minor wording tweaks, new fonts, his name front and center. Like I didn't even exist. That smug bastard had copied my work, rebranded it, and served it to Cynthia like it was caviar on a silver platter. And she ate it up. I won't lie, I almost quit. I stared at my resignation letter that night, fingers hovering over the send button. But then I asked myself, why should I walk away? I wasn't the problem. Tyler was. And that's when I knew. I wasn't going to quit. I was going to watch him fall, and I was going to be the one who pushed him. But you can't take down a guy like Tyler with brute force. He was slippery, charming, covered in Teflon. Nothing ever stuck to him. If I went to HR with complaints, I'd be branded jealous. If I called him out in a meeting, he'd twist it and walk away clean. So I started with what I do best, watching. For weeks, I kept my mouth shut and my eyes open. I documented everything. Every time he used my data in his reports. Every time he met with Cynthia behind closed doors right after I shared something in a team meeting. Every coincidental overlap. The pattern was undeniable. But that wasn't the only pattern I found. Others, co-workers who had once been promising, had either mysteriously transferred, left suddenly, or been quietly let go. And every single one of them had one thing in common. They stood in Tyler's way. This wasn't just favoritism. It was calculated. Tyler wasn't just playing the game. He was rigging it. That realization chilled me. But it also gave me clarity. If I wanted justice, not just for me, but for everyone he'd steamrolled, I had to outplay him. Quietly, strategically, ruthlessly. So I smiled. I congratulated him in front of the team. I even brought donuts the next morning, like the good little team player I pretended to be. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, I began building something else. A plan. I wasn't going to just survive Tyler. I was going to make sure he never walked into another boardroom again. You know that gut feeling when something just isn't right, but you can't prove it yet? That's exactly how it felt every time Tyler opened his mouth. He had a way of twisting things, of making problems sound like they were never his fault, and ideas like they were always his. He was charming, sure. Always polished. Always grinning like he knew something no one else did. But underneath that million-dollar smile, there was rot. I could feel it. And now I was going to find it. I started small. Late nights at the office when no one was around, I combed through project files, presentation drafts, version histories. What I found made me sick. There were dozens of cases where Tyler had taken credit for work he didn't do. Reports that were written by junior analysts, but had his name on the final slide. Email threads where he subtly replaced names, forwarding results to Cynthia like he'd stayed up all night running the numbers. And Cynthia? She ate it up like candy. It was infuriating, but also useful. Because with every file I opened, every timestamp I examined, I got one step closer to the truth and one step closer to justice. The next move was riskier. I started talking to the ghosts. By ghosts, I mean the people Tyler had pushed out of the company, the ones no one mentioned anymore. I reached out to them on LinkedIn, one by one, posing as someone looking for mentorship or career advice. The responses? Let's just say I didn't have to twist anyone's arm to get them talking. "You're dealing with a snake," one said. "He tanked my numbers by messing with shared reports," another confessed. "I caught him logging into my account once. HR said it was a misunderstanding." Story after story, all of them painted the same picture. A guy who didn't rise by talent, but by eliminating competition. Quietly, efficiently, without leaving fingerprints. And for years, he'd gotten away with it. Until me. I remember one call in particular, late at night with a woman named Laura who used to lead marketing. She'd been a rising star until, according to office gossip, she burned out. Turns out, Tyler had fed false campaign metrics to Cynthia, making Laura look incompetent. Then, when the department underperformed, she took the fall. Meanwhile, he swooped in with recommendations and got himself assigned to her team. That was the pattern. Sabotage, blame, swoop, and shine. It was textbook corporate sociopathy. I was so deep into this rabbit hole, I barely noticed how good I'd gotten at playing my part. I smiled at Tyler every morning, laughed at his stupid jokes, praised his ideas in meetings, all while mentally cataloging every lie, every slimy move. He had no clue, and that was the point. The more I found, the more I realized this wasn't just about me anymore. He hadn't just stolen a promotion. He'd stolen careers, lives. It was time someone stole something back. His reputation. But to do that, I needed to let him walk right into a trap of his own making. So I started preparing the bait. If you want to destroy someone like Tyler, you can't go it alone. You need voices, stories, witnesses, and maybe, just maybe, a little quiet rage simmering in the background. That's when I started tapping into what I called the whisper network. You see, every office has one. That quiet undercurrent of conversation that never shows up in Slack channels or HR memos. It lives in side eyes during meetings. It breathes through awkward silences at the break room fridge. It's where the truth lives, not the version written in quarterly reports, but the raw, messy, human truth. And once I started listening, I heard everything. People didn't like Tyler. They feared him, admired his ability to stay on top, sure, but no one trusted him. They smiled to his face and locked their screens the moment he passed by. Some called him Teflon Ty, because nothing ever stuck, no matter how shady. But the stories they whispered when they thought no one was listening, those were gold. I trained him, and next thing I knew, I was underperforming. He scheduled client calls behind my back and took all the credit. I caught him changing line items in a shared budget spreadsheet. When I brought it up to Cynthia, she said I must be mistaken. Again and again, it was the same pattern. Someone would shine, Tyler would undermine, and suddenly that person was on probation or quietly moved to another team. It wasn't gossip. It was a playbook. And I realized something else. Most people weren't just mad. They were tired. Tired of the fake smiles. Tired of watching good people leave. Tired of wondering when it would be their turn. That fatigue was power. Unorganized, unfocused, but power nonetheless. So I started connecting the dots. Innocent questions in one-on-ones. "Hey, remember that project Tyler led last quarter? Weren't you on that team?" Follow-up emails. "Would love to know more about your role on the Westbridge pitch. Just doing some internal project mapping." Casual lunches. "Tyler ever take over your project and somehow end up in the spotlight?" I kept it light, disarming, but I was gathering data like a detective in a noir film. Slowly, patterns emerged. Names overlapped. Stories aligned. I wasn't imagining it. He had done this to almost everyone, and no one had connected the dots. Until now. But here's the thing about truth. No matter how powerful it is, it means nothing without evidence. And that's when I realized I had to take things up a notch. I needed proof that Tyler wasn't just manipulative. He was dangerous. Someone whose actions could actually hurt the company. So I shifted focus. Started watching what he touched most. Financial reports, client data, performance reviews. I pulled old versions from shared drives, compared timestamps, noted inconsistencies. Then came the big one. A budget file tied to a major client account, Westbridge. Tyler had streamlined some of the numbers. On paper, it looked better for quarterly results. But when I traced the changes, the math didn't add up. It looked like fraud. Maybe not the kind that lands you in prison, but enough to raise questions at the top. And if I could prove that he'd done it intentionally, well, then the whisper network wouldn't be whispering much longer. It would be screaming. You can't take down a guy like Tyler by exposing the truth alone. You need to make him step into it, willingly, arrogantly, blindly. That's how traps work. The prey has to think it's a win. So I crafted one. I started by feeding his ego. At the next team meeting, I threw out an idea, intentionally vague but promising. I pitched it like it was unfinished, still early stage. Something about optimizing project delivery using AI-based scheduling. Tyler's ears perked up immediately, just like I knew they would. Within hours, he sent me a message. Hey, great idea in the meeting. Would love to brainstorm more if you're open. Translation? Give me everything so I can steal it. I played it cool. Said I was still refining it. I offered to share a rough draft, but warned it was messy and not ready yet. That was bait number one. I uploaded a document into our shared drive. It looked real, sounded technical, but I embedded tracking markers in it. Every time someone opened the doc, I'd get a timestamp. Every time a section was copied, I'd know. Within 2 days, Tyler had opened it 4 times and copied 2 major blocks of text. Step 1, confirmed. Then I did something bold. I created a second version. This one cleaner, more polished, but with intentional errors. Not small typos. No, I embedded financial miscalculations that would look correct at a glance, but would create major problems if ever used in a client presentation. And I labeled the file Q3 Final Draft, internal only. I shared it with Tyler privately. A few days later, I heard him pitching my idea, using my document, to Cynthia. She was excited. She wanted a formal proposal ready by next week. Tyler nodded like a man who had just built a spaceship out of paper clips. I watched from across the room, smiling politely. He had no idea that the file he was using was rigged to implode. But that wasn't enough. I needed him to keep using it, to push it up the chain. I needed him to own it. So I fed the fire. I started a whisper, subtle and flattering. When Cynthia was around, I dropped lines like, Tyler's been really stepping up lately. Or his idea might actually scale beyond what we expected. She smiled. I nodded. Tyler beamed. He felt powerful. He felt untouchable. And that's when he got sloppy. He forwarded the fake Q3 final to a senior director, without checking the numbers. And then, just like I hoped, the director asked to present it to a client. That was the moment. I watched him dig his own grave, with a golden shovel I'd handed him. But there was still one final thing I had to do before the trap could snap shut. I needed a confession. Not in the legal sense, but a moment where Tyler would let his mask slip. A moment I could record, archive, and drop like a bomb when the time was right. So I set the stage. A Friday evening. The office nearly empty. I accidentally bumped into him in the hallway near the break room. Hey man, I said casually. That AI idea is really getting traction, huh? He grinned. Told you I'd make it work. Yeah, though I could have sworn I mentioned something like that in last month's team sync. He chuckled. Well, you know how this place works. It's all about who sells it best. And just like that, the mask cracked. I left the conversation there, walked back to my desk, and uploaded the audio file from my smartwatch to my encrypted drive. The trap was almost ready. Now all I needed was for the client meeting to happen, and for Tyler to walk straight into the explosion. Tyler walked into the fire smiling. That's the thing about guys like him. They believe their charm can extinguish any flame. But this time, he wasn't just stepping into heat. He was stepping into evidence. The day of the Westbridge client meeting was electric. The entire floor was buzzing. This was one of our biggest accounts, and Cynthia had made it clear, impressing them meant a shot at a larger contract, maybe even nationwide rollout. Tyler strutted around the office like a man who already had his name on the plaque. I kept quiet, smiled, waited. The presentation began at 11 a.m. sharp. I wasn't in the room, officially, but I didn't need to be. I'd embedded a tiny metadata tracker into the file he was about to use. The moment he opened it, I got pinged. The moment he advanced to slide 5, the one with the bad numbers, I knew. And less than an hour later, it happened. Boom. The client flagged discrepancies in the projected ROI. Not just one, several. The financial team on their side ran the math live on the call and found that the numbers were inflated and some logic didn't make sense. One even asked if we'd recently switched analysts. Tyler froze, fumbled, tried to explain it away, but you could feel the tension from the other side of the glass wall. Cynthia leaned in, face tight. The client postponed the follow-up meeting, pending internal review. I pretended to be shocked when I heard about it. Oh wow, I thought Tyler double-checked everything. I even offered to help clean up the file, already knowing exactly what they'd find. It was time for phase 2. I pulled together a digital package. I called it Operation Ghost Files. Inside it were a side-by-side comparison of the original proposal and Tyler's altered version, screenshots showing metadata and edit timestamps, the fake Q3 file with highlighted miscalculations, a list of projects where Tyler had led but others had done the core work, the audio clip from our hallway chat, and testimonies. Remember the Whisper Network? I circled back. I contacted the ex-employees and a few brave current ones. They were ready now. I compiled short, anonymized statements. Just enough to show a pattern. No legal exposure, but strong enough to raise red flags for HR. The final document was nearly 80 pages. And I didn't just send it to HR. I blind copied it to the board, to legal, to internal audit. And, just for fun, I printed a copy and slid it under Cynthia's office door early Monday morning before anyone else arrived. Then I waited. At 10:32 a.m., my inbox exploded. First, a note from HR requesting a confidential conversation. Then an email from Cynthia. No subject line. Just 2 words. Come in. Tyler hadn't shown up to work yet. Maybe he felt the shift in the air. Or maybe he was still recovering from the client call that nearly burned his career to ash. Either way, the walls were closing in, and he didn't even know who was behind them. Yet, there's something intoxicating about watching a liar squirm, especially when the web they spun finally starts to strangle them. That Monday morning felt different. The usual office buzz was quiet, like the tension before a storm. I sat at my desk, sipping lukewarm coffee, pretending to scroll emails. But in reality, I was listening, watching, waiting, and I wasn't the only one. People were whispering in the corners, glancing toward Cynthia's office, wondering where Tyler was. At 11:06 a.m., he finally showed up. Wrinkled shirt, no tie, eyes red like he hadn't slept. The guy who normally floated through the hallway like he owned the place now looked like he was sneaking into a courtroom. He made a beeline for his desk and didn't say a word. That was when I knew. He felt it. The trap had sprung, and even if he didn't know how, he knew it hurt. I got the call to come into Cynthia's office around 11:30. She sat there with her laptop open, lips pressed into a line. The file I'd created opened on her screen. The expression on her face was unreadable, not angry, not confused. Just quiet. She gestured to the chair across from her. "This is a lot." I nodded. "I know. Why didn't you come forward sooner?" I paused. Because for a long time, I didn't think anyone would believe me. Or worse, that it wouldn't matter. She didn't respond right away, just tapped a fingernail against her coffee mug. "I had no idea," she finally said. And for once, I believed her. I didn't press her. I didn't gloat. I just laid out the facts again, calmly, clearly. I wasn't there for revenge. Not in the classic sense. I was there for accountability. For everyone Tyler had silenced or ruined. For the ones who didn't get a chance to speak. By the end of the conversation, she looked 10 years older. She thanked me, told me the next steps would be handled by legal and HR. That was all I needed to hear. By lunchtime, rumors had exploded. People said Tyler had been pulled into a closed-door meeting. Others claimed he tried to shift blame to bad data or sabotage. One person swore he slammed a chair. Another said they saw him pacing in the parking garage, yelling on the phone. And me? I just kept feeding the fire, carefully, quietly. I answered questions with cryptic shrugs. I left breadcrumbs in Slack. Did anyone else notice how similar Tyler's Westbridge deck looked to Josh's AI concept? Innocent on the surface, damning underneath. The office wasn't just suspicious anymore. It was awake. People started digging on their own. Old files got reopened. Team leads began re-evaluating collaborations with Tyler. It turned out he'd stepped on more toes than even I knew. The man had built a throne out of stolen bricks. And now the whole building was shaking. Late that afternoon, I passed him in the hallway. He didn't look at me, didn't say a word. But I did see his hands, clenched so tight, his knuckles were white. It wasn't over yet. But Tyler was burning. And I was the one holding the match. There's a moment in every downfall when the mask doesn't just crack, it shatters. For Tyler, that moment came on Wednesday morning. By then, everyone knew something was wrong. HR had been holding quiet meetings. Cynthia looked like she hadn't slept in days. Even the execs, who usually hovered above office drama, were suddenly walking around the floor, whispering behind glass doors. And Tyler? He was unraveling. His usually flawless appearance had faded. Hair uncombed, shirt untucked. No more smooth greetings or self-congratulatory smiles. Just tension and paranoia. I caught him staring at me a few times, trying to figure out if I had something to do with it. He didn't have proof, not yet, but the suspicion was all over his face. I didn't blink. Let him stew. And that's when he made his biggest mistake. See, in all his scrambling to stay afloat, Tyler thought he could regain control the way he always did, by going on the offensive. So he did what he did best, sabotage. Only this time, it was sloppy. He accessed an internal sales report tied to a sensitive client and made unauthorized edits, shifting performance metrics to make his department look better and another team look worse. The problem? I'd already warned that client's rep, anonymously, that some unusual fluctuations might be coming their way. Just enough to get them curious. Just enough to make them look closely. And when the altered file hit their inbox, they noticed. Fast. Within hours, a complaint was sent to our compliance department. By the end of the day, the company had launched a formal audit. That was the final domino. The execs were furious. HR locked Tyler in a conference room for over 3 hours. He came out pale, sweating, and visibly shaken. Gone was the man who once ruled our floor with charm and manipulation. What stood in his place was a shell, exposed, cornered, desperate. But it got worse. Because someone, and I won't say who, anonymously leaked parts of the audit's preliminary findings to the rest of the staff. Not full files. Not confidential data. Just enough to light the match. The hallway buzzed with quotes like, repeated falsification of internal documents, deliberate misrepresentation of client-facing data, pattern of undermining team collaboration for personal gain. People were stunned and vindicated. It was like a collective exhale. He wasn't just a jerk. He was toxic. And now he was caught. I passed his desk that afternoon. Empty. His nameplate gone. Drawer open. The only thing left was a crumpled, sticky note with a smiley face drawn on it. Irony. Maybe. Or just the last desperate act of a man who thought he could fake his way through forever. The company didn't send a farewell email. No announcement. Just silence. But inside that silence was a storm of relief. And I wasn't finished. The takedown was complete. But the truth still needed to be heard, loud and clear. Tyler was gone. Officially, there was no statement. No email. No HR announcement. But his desk was cleared. His name was scrubbed from internal systems. Meetings where he used to lead now had someone else's name on the invite. For the rest of the office, it was over. But for me, there was one last move to make. You see, Tyler hadn't just sabotaged spreadsheets and projects. He had sabotaged people. Real people with families, dreams, and careers. People who left jobs they once loved because of him. And I wasn't going to let his exit be a quiet one. So I gathered everything. All of it. The fake decks. The emails. The audit notes. The testimonies. And, most importantly, the audio recording from the hallway. The moment he laughed and said, "It's all about who sells it best." That wasn't just ego. That was intent. I packaged it all into one comprehensive report and sent it off. Not just to our leadership, but to every employee. Full transparency. No more secrets. I didn't include names of victims. Only initials and roles, to protect them. But the point was clear. He didn't fall. He was exposed. And when people read it, really read it, something happened I didn't expect. They started talking. I got messages from people in other departments. From satellite offices. From staff I'd never even met. They shared stories of times they'd felt gaslit, manipulated, or randomly transferred after a disagreement. Tyler's reach had stretched further than I knew. One person messaged, "I thought I was crazy. Thank you for confirming I wasn't." Another said, "I used to love working here," until he took credit for everything I did. It wasn't just justice. It was healing. And then, in the strangest twist of all, came Cynthia. She called me into her office late Friday afternoon. Same tight smile. Same guarded eyes. But something had shifted. "I read your report," she said. "Every word." I waited. "You should know," she continued. "This isn't the first time I've had doubts." But I ignored them. I wanted to believe someone could be that good. She paused, looked me square in the eye. "You made sure none of us can ignore the truth anymore." Then she slid something across the desk. A sealed envelope. Inside, A formal offer, promotion, pay bump, new title. I stared at it for a long time. Then I slid it right back. Respectfully, I think it's time I stepped away. She looked surprised. You're quitting? I'm choosing peace. For a moment, she didn't respond. Then she stood and extended her hand. Then thank you for doing what most people wouldn't dare. I shook her hand, walked out of her office, and took a long, slow breath. I had one final thing to do. I walked into the break room, placed a printed copy of the report on the community bulletin board, and pinned a yellow sticky note to the top. It read, "He fooled us for years, but not anymore." And with that, I was done. Justice doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it's quiet, but you can feel it, like a shift in gravity, like something heavy finally being lifted off everyone's shoulders. The Monday after I posted the full report, the office felt different. Lighter. People greeted each other with real smiles. Conversations didn't die out when someone walked by. No one rushed to lock their screens. It was subtle, but undeniable, like someone had cut the tension line that had been strangling us for years. But the biggest shift? Cynthia. She didn't hide anymore. She was in the bullpen, walking the floor, checking in with teams, asking questions, listening, and more importantly, owning her part. I should have seen it sooner, she told one team. I missed things I shouldn't have. It didn't sound like damage control. It sounded real, and people noticed. Meanwhile, the internal investigation wrapped up. Official findings were kept confidential, but the results were obvious. Tyler's contract was terminated with cause. His name was removed from every internal system, award, and project archive. All documentation he touched was flagged for review, and a new integrity review process was implemented across the company. But the real moment, the one that sealed everything, came on Thursday. There was a town hall. Everyone was invited, company-wide, virtual and in person. Cynthia stood at the front of the auditorium. No podium, no fancy slides. Just her, a wireless mic, and a look on her face I'd never seen before, humility. She started by apologizing, not just for Tyler, but for the culture that let him thrive. She admitted she'd overlooked concerns, that she'd allowed her personal bias to cloud judgment, that she'd believed performance over principle, and it cost the company more than just money. And then she did something bold. She invited employees to anonymously share stories, not just about Tyler, but about anyone who made their work unsafe, unfair, or unbearable. HR created a secure portal. Leadership promised action, not performative fixes, real change. For the first time, people believed them, because this time, they had proof that silence had done damage. And someone had finally broken that silence. That night, as I left the building for the last time, I didn't feel like a hero. I felt clean. I had taken on a system that protected the wrong people. I had exposed a lie wrapped in charm. I hadn't just gotten revenge. I'd forced the company to look itself in the mirror. I stood in the parking lot, looking up at the building where I had once felt small. And I smiled. Because now they all knew the truth. And Tyler, wherever he was, he knew exactly who made sure they did. Some endings don't feel like endings. They feel like exhale. That's what it felt like when I turned in my badge. No fanfare. No awkward goodbye party. No cake in the break room with my name spelled wrong. Just a quiet walk to Cynthia's office, a quick signature, a firm handshake, and I was free. Free from the politics, the fake smiles, the weight of watching good people lose to someone who never played fair. Free from Tyler's shadow. And yet, even as I left, I felt something else. Not emptiness. Not sadness. Clarity. Because here's the truth most people won't say out loud. Sometimes, justice doesn't come from the top down. Sometimes, it comes from the quiet guy in the corner who decides enough is enough. I didn't burn the place down. I didn't scream. I didn't seek revenge for revenge's sake. I just held up a mirror. And in doing so, I gave people permission to stop pretending. In the weeks that followed, things shifted across the company. HR took a more active role in internal accountability. Team leads were retrained. Anonymous surveys were launched. People spoke up, not in whispers, but out loud. And it spread. Other departments, other offices. The Tylers in other corners of the company were suddenly under scrutiny. One message changed everything. I got an email from Laura, the former marketing lead Tyler had sabotaged. She wrote, "I just read what you did." I cried. Not because he's gone, but because someone finally stood up. You didn't just win. You freed us. That stuck with me. Because that's what it felt like. Not revenge. Release. I didn't leave that company bitter. I left it whole. Rebuilt. Lighter. I found a new job a few months later, smaller firm, healthier culture. A place where integrity wasn't a punchline and credit wasn't a competition. And you know what? I smile more now. I sleep better. I don't second-guess every meeting invite. And the best part? No more looking over my shoulder. No more playing defense. Just peace. Some people spend their whole careers surviving places that were never meant for them. I'm lucky. I got to walk out on my terms. And if you're listening to this, wondering if you're stuck in a place like I was, hear me now? You are not crazy. You are not alone. And yes, you can fight back. But the smartest revenge isn't destruction. It's rising. Higher than they ever thought you could. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Did he do the right thing?